Okay, welcome to the third official episode of MK's Mouth. I'm your ever-irritable host, MK Kilmernock, aka Ricky, depending on what you know me by on forums. I wish I could have been in a better mood, but people seem to like pissing me off tonight, so you know how it is. I'm gonna fucking kill you all! Today's subject is death, specifically unrolled deaths. This is actually a topic I can fucking talk about quite a bit, so we shouldn't have any problems. This one was suggested by my dear sweet brother, so I'll be sure to put some extra effort, more than I usually give anyway. Okay, obviously deaths are a pretty big part of survival of the fittest. We wouldn't have any sort of general concept without them. People need to die. It's a game where kids die. It's the fucking bread and butter of our site. Death. We have to deal with it a lot. And because it's such a huge deal, it's probably the most vital thing that you gotta get right. I mean, you don't want to fuck anything up, but if you're gonna do one thing right with your character, you gotta really make sure that their death is a real big impact maker. So, it's more important than most, so I think I'd start off with deaths in general. Maybe make a few pointers on what makes a good death. Obviously, a death should evoke some sort of emotion, and surprisingly enough, the emotion is not always sadness. 90% of the time it's sadness. It's death. Death is generally sad. It's a fucking no-brainer here, but there's a lot of other stuff. There's confusion, there's helplessness, there's heroicism if the person who's dying happens to be a villain of some sort. Sometimes there's a breakdown. Sometimes, in very rare instances, there's humor, whether it be intentional or otherwise. You know who I'm talking about. As long as it evokes some sort of emotion that's strong, intentionally, then you've probably written a great death. There's many factors that go into it. It's way too many to really pick on, but as a general analysis, it's got to evoke something. We've had some really sad deaths here in V4. We've had some really powerful ones in a more villainous sense. Say what you will about the character, but I kind of liked Maxwell Lombardi's death in terms of, you know, big bad villain, yo, I'm evil, blam, blam, blam. And then when he goes down, he doesn't take it too well. So, I mean, it's not very sad. You don't really feel bad for Maxwell, given all the shit that he's done, or at least you don't feel bad if you're a normal person. But when you go down, you still feel something. You feel some sort of emotional impact because of who he was, what he did, what it took to bring him down, and just how fucking brutal it was. Sure, the death itself was mildly Disney-ish. I'm reminded of the fucking Snow White and the Seven Dwarves movie when he falls off the cliff, but you know what I mean. Humor, Richard Hahn for the intentional part of it, Remy Pierce for unintentional. Need I say more? Good job making me laugh at a death, by the way. Pretty sure everyone said the exact same thing. That's a pretty rare reaction, and it's refreshing when everyone's got these sad, or at least depressing deaths, and then one comes out of left field to go, hey, this is funny and pretty well written. Creativity of the thread changing notwithstanding, you didn't even need a thread changing, it still would have been funny as hell. I guess I'm going to get more to the point that Tobin wanted me to discuss, which was unrolled deaths. For the uninitiated, I suppose I'll go over it, how deaths work. You know, rolls are made. When a character's rolled, they have a specific time set for them to die. If they don't die, the mod team takes care of it, but usually they die within the allotted time. And if we didn't have rolls, we'd probably still be on V1 right now. Actually, I know we'd be on V1 given the quality of writing. and V4 would probably take a decade or two. So obviously they're integral, vital to the game, but sometimes you get unrolled deaths. Unrolled deaths, simply put, are shocking. They are blindsiding, and when you add the element of surprise to something, it can be all that more deadly. V4, if I'm not mistaken, and I very well could be, had some of the largest, if not the largest, collection of unrolled deaths on its first day out of any Survival of the Fittest main game. We had a lot of day one deaths, none of which were rolled. And from these you get a lovely spectrum of ineffective deaths and effective deaths, and a myriad in between. For ineffective, man, I hate but I love picking on this. Say it with me, enjoy everyone. Remy Pierce. The first death of V4. An outstanding fallacy of logic, in character I suppose, if he were brain dead. But it cheapens the character. Again, for the uninitiated, Remy Pierce wakes up, finds that his weapon is like I think it was a Tonto, basically a knife. Goes, if I cut my collar, maybe I can travel through the death zones. Needless to say, it doesn't go well. So he dies from collar detonation, and just a few short moments later, Dallas Reynolds dies of the same way, but Remy's more famous because he did it first, and did it kind of more stupidly. I don't think Dallas's was as hard a bitch slap in the face of logic. But the main point that I'm trying to get at here is that such fucking pointless death cheapened a character that was built up all pre-game, or at least built pre-game. Then we have one better on the scale, and Dom's probably sitting in front of his computer going, why are you bringing this up? But I'm going to bring up Warren Brown, who died in the town center, killed by Omar Burton, if memory serves me well. This one had some storyline relevance, which gives it more power. Omar is going to try and play the game for Sierra Manning, Mimi's character. And, I'm sorry, Fiera, there we go. And so we get this very casual, almost scary casual scene where he walks up to Warren, who's kind of having a dirt moment because everyone got drugged, so he's trying to shake that off, and he's got a gun next to him, and Omar's like, yo, what's up? Whoops, got your gun. Bang. And what I didn't play up enough there is that it starts off as like, oh, hey, what's going on? And when he's close enough, he makes a break for it, grabs the gun, shoots Warren. It's a very quick kill and a very quick death, and it's also the setting for one of the largest threads of the early game. But it wasn't as cut and dry, point blank, pointless as Remy Pierce's death, because that was no relevance. This was establishing Omar's characterization. It offered some tragedy to Warren because he didn't kill himself. It was just it was a pretty good setup. Great setup all the way around. Then there was the lesser known of the Ishida twins, Reika, who was probably my favorite unrolled death of day one, which would be establishing Cleo's was it Cleo? I thought it was Cleo, but I might be thinking Chris. but I'm almost positive it was Cleo. It establishes her, the killer's reputation as a villain, or at least her characterization as a villain or a player. It offers Reiko her whole setup, but honestly, what really struck me here was that you just didn't see it coming, and that's the whole point behind an unrolled death, and that's what makes it that extra bit more brutal than a rolled death. Is I probably could have called something like Remy Pierce, because, you know, who's Remy Pierce, or I didn't follow Warren Brown all that much in pregame. I'm a bad boy, but I knew of the Ishida twins. I had been introduced to their presence before, and I knew how much effort was put into them, and then, whoops, one of them is dead. And that way, wait, whoa, what? Read the thread again and go, okay, that just happened. It's that element of spontaneity where we get to feel like, we get to feel like the audience watching at home. They don't have the roles told to them, so they know ahead of time who's going to die. So we have no idea, and they have no idea, so we get to sympathize with them when someone dies, and we really get that full holy shit factor, or the holy shit quotient, as my, I don't know, I guess that was tropes. Shit. I thought that was something from my programming class. That was actually called the wow factor. Huh? Doy. Whatever. So, I can't stress enough, I guess I'm just going to rephrase the point again and again until I drill it into everyone's brains. It's about the suddenness, it's about the blindsiding, it's about the holy shit, I was not expecting that character to die, and because they were not rolled, that really caught me by surprise. That's what I think about unrolled deaths, anyway. You can always botch them. There's always bad unrolled deaths, specifically on day one. I was thinking about killing off Craig on day one, and then I realized after the whole Remy incident how terribly laughable and ineffective that would have been. Might have added a spot of humor, but I probably wouldn't have outdone the likes of Richard Hahn. Actually, I know I wouldn't have outdone the likes of Richard Hahn. That was kind of like a once-time deal. But would have been funny, pretty sure. But you always have to take discretion when you're going to do an unrolled death. First off, you're hurting your chances. So if you're a handler that actually cares about winning the game, doing an unrolled death is unwise because you're reducing your chances by one. But as for writing a story, it works tremendously. You have to make a bit of a sacrifice. Maybe that's what adds to part of the punch. You're sacrificing one of your own characters for pretty much no good reason. Well, not no good reason, but for no real reason in the game sense. And then in the writing sense, you're doing it for a story. You close out their story in the way that you want it to do. Instead of letting the roles dictate what you do, you write the story. You decide what's going to happen. Sure, the story is cut short when the roles say they are, but nothing's keeping you from dragging it on longer than it has to. When a character's story is over, you can end it. You can end it on your own terms, and you can end it with that extra wow, that extra shock, that extra, and I fucking hate this word, pizzazz. So, yeah, I hope I covered all the bases. The elements of a good death, a bad death, specifically unrolled, some examples therein. A bit of a shorter episode than most, but there's no point in needlessly padding it. By very popular request, next episode is going to be a toughie. It's going to be my dearest daughter's request for gender roles in the game. I may touch upon additional requests to, it's not so much gender roles as it is the difficulty of writing a character of the opposite gender, but I may address the following edition of, both ways, a girl writing a guy writing a girl. As you can see through my constant stuttering and flip-flopping. That's going to be one hell of a topic, but everyone wants to see it, so I'm going to do my best. Might actually do a bit of forefront and preparation for that one. I'm going to need it. I didn't really need it for this one. This one was pretty easy. Death is kind of my bag. Alright, so thank you for tuning in. I'm glad I didn't manage to strangle anyone. I'll see you next time. Ciao.